Come to order. Roll call, please.
Roll call for Legislative Day 9, Thursday, February 24th. Anderson? Here. Baldwin? Here. Beitman? Here. Boner? Here. Bouchard? Here. Case? Present. Cooper? Here. Driscoll? Ellis? Present. French? Here. Murphy? Here. Garou? Here. Hicks? Here. Hutchings? Here. James? Here. Kinski? Here. Cole? Present. Cost? Here. Landon? Here. McEwen? Here. Nethercott? Pappas? Here. Driscoll here. Perkins? Rothfuss? Aye, right here. Salazar? Here. Schuler? Here. Scott? Here. Steinmetz? Here. Wasserberger? Wasserberger? Here. Perkins? Excused, Mr. President?
Excused.
Perkins excused. President Dockstader?
Here.
29 present, 1 excused.
Thank you. Prayer by Reverend Gilbert.
May we pray. Sovereign God, as in the story of David and Goliath, may there be a pebble that brings Putin to his knees and peace for Ukraine. Everlasting Father, we be present among all. Along with the rising sun, our new day of life has begun. May it be filled with wise voices and valued votes. The road we tread can be a better pill, with dashed hopes and defeated dreams. Yet keep us steady and strong until we stand with victorious victory, won and achievements known. You, O God, have brought us thus this far. May enduring wisdom and well-chosen words win the victory. The path of right sometimes seems void of light, yet within the gloom there glows the wavering light of golden victory. Guiding and girding God, guard us against all false pretense and lead to where endearing and enduring principles are placed into practice. We have been elected, appointed, invited to lead, so may we do so with clear reasoning, decisive debate, and just decisions. With the setting of the sun and the closure of the day, may we hear you say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." When our head rests quietly upon the pillow, may we rest secure in the knowledge we stood true to you and true to our chosen land. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Senator Cooper, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's just, for a couple of privileges here, Senator Salazar.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Point of privilege.
Please do.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I have friends in the Ukraine, and I wanted to simply state that I wish to condemn the Russian invasion of the Ukraine yesterday. I believe that this criminal act will not stand in the years ahead. As one commentator said yesterday, Russia is attempting to swallow a porcupine. And I pray for the people of the Ukraine and for my friends who are caught in the Ukraine, and I wish them only victory. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Further privileges? Further privileges? Reading and correction approval. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the words of my colleague, fellow veteran. Just want to ask everybody to pray for two constituents of mine who are in Odessa, last I heard, trying to adopt two young Ukrainian kids, make the courageous decision to go in and try to get those kids out of there and are in the process of trying to get out of that country. So I got at least two Wyomingites caught in the middle of that situation. Obviously, Odessa being a very important economic and military area to that country. So I ask that you keep them in your prayers, and that freedom and peace may prevail, even if it doesn't look likely.
Thank you. Hope the best for them. Further privileges. Mike, yeah. Okay. Reading, correction, approval of the journal. Reading clerk, please read the journal committee report.
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 23, 2022 has been read and recommends it be approved. Senator Kolb, Chairman.
Thank you. Any objections? Being none, the report's adopted. As noted, we have Reverend Gilbert with us today, our doctor today, Dr. Tom Radosovich on the side there. Would you stand, sir, so the Senate could acknowledge you from Casper? Thank you for coming, keeping us well today, sir. Today in Wyoming history, in 1897, Wyoming accepted a grant of 1 square mile of land from the Wind River Reservation for now what in Thermopolis? The hot springs. It's a grant. Quote of the day, it always seems impossible until it's done. Nelson Mandela. Session status, today is the last day for bills to be reported out of committee in House of Origin. Reminder, 1 week from this Friday, all interim topics must be submitted via online from 4 p.m. by 4 p.m. And one other note, the Rules Committee will be meeting today at 12 noon in the Capitol Extension Room W002 and online for SF 70, the Revisers Bill. And if you haven't had a chance to sign these resolutions up here at the table, they're still there. And one other, deadline for third amendments on the budget today at 5 o'clock. Here we go. Messages. Senator Hicks,
Could I have privilege of the floor?
please do.
Mr. President, I just want to send out a thank you from the Senate to the Wyoming Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police Association for that fine breakfast that they provided to you. I hope you had an opportunity to stop down and visit with your local law enforcement this morning. And just a big thank you. If we could give our law enforcement a big hand for that, I appreciate it.
Certainly can.
Where'd they go?
Thank you to all those who traveled to be here in Cheyenne today. Senator Perkins.
No, I'm just looking
Oh.
at the board, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I just want to make a note too before we go to messages. I want to thank all of you for working hard into the night, sorting out the rules, getting all that done. I appreciate that. Tested our intellect and our skills last night. Thank you for working hard, and a big thank you to the staff for being there to support us through all of it. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 23, 2022, message number 122. Mr. President, House Bill number 37, Juvenile Justice Data Reporting, passed the House on third reading in an amended form. Ayes 55, noes 4, excused 1. Signed, Wendy Harding, House Chief Clerk.
Thank you. Introduction, reading, and reference of bills. House Bill 37, first reading of the bill.
House Bill 37 engrossed, Juvenile Justice Data Reporting, sponsored by the Judiciary Committee, an act relating to criminal history records. Passed the House, ayes 55, noes 4, excused 1.
Thank you. House Bill 37 is referred to Committee Number 2, or Committee Number 1, Judiciary. Bills on second reading. Senate File 7, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 7, Wyoming Gaming Commission Scrivener Error Correction.
There are no amendments. Senate File 7 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it's so ordered. Senate File 36, second reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 36, Pharmacy Benefit Managers Act Enhancements.
There is an amendment. Please read in the amendment.
Senate File 36, second reading amendment number 1, page 9, line 12, after.
Senator Hutchings.
For me. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move amendment number 1 to, second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 36 and ask for your favorable, ask for an aye vote, actually. Before I get started, I'd really like to thank everybody in the body that have worked with me to make this what I believe is a really, really good bill and help me with my amendments and ideas to move this bill forward. We will be in third reading after we get, hopefully, these 2 changes done, bringing the amendment the good President of the Appropriations Branch suggested to divide the dates on the bill, so we'll be doing that. On this particular amendment, I'd like to actually divide it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, where would you like to divide?
Lines 1 through 12, I'd like you to vote no. And lines 13 through 20, I'd like you to vote yes.
So Division 1 is lines 1 through 12. Division 2 is lines 13 through 20. And the request is to vote no on Division 1, vote aye on Division 2. From that, Senator Hutchings, would you explain?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We were going to take out a section on page 9, starting at line 12 through 22 on to page 11, and we decided to leave that in there, hopefully with the third reading amendment. That can go into the bill, stay there, and possibly be a part of the consideration for a push forward to 2023. So we want that particular area to stay in. And on second.
Let's do this.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any discussion on Division 1, okay?
Thank you, Mr.
Senator.
Chairman.
Senator Case, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. So one possibility here is this is the senator's amendment. And if she chooses not to offer part of the amendment, she can ask for that division to be withdrawn and you wouldn't require a vote.
That would be
So
fine, too.
that's a possibility.
Appreciate your information on that. Senator, what's your desire? Like to withdraw?
I would like to withdraw 1 through 12. Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator.
And maybe a note as to why you're withdrawing? And maybe
Why?
a note as to why you're withdrawing?
Why I'm withdrawing, the same reason we want to leave this portion in the bill.
Okay, fair enough. Now let's go to Division 2.
Absent objection.
Absent objection.
objection.
Is withdrawn. Thank you. And, yeah, back to the amendment that's existing. It's not a division, then back to what's left with the amendment. Go ahead, Senator.
So absent, so should I go on to number 2?
Yeah, where you just, that's what's left of the amendment, so you just.
Great, great. What we're doing here, Mr. Chairman, there was a small section in the bill, it was caught during committee, that we had included a definition that was not needed in the bill. So all this is doing, 13 through 20, is just removing that definition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like an aye vote on that.
All right, any discussion on this? Any discussion? Okay, on the amendment, this is second reading amendment number 1 to 36 with the lines 1 through 12 withdrawn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Now we're back to a second reading amendment. Reader, read it in the second amendment.
Senate File 36, second reading amendment number 2, page 5, line 8, after.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 36. Ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, there was discussion about what a PBA could and couldn't do, and obviously there's some good provisions in the bill that try to limit that based on those discussions, and I think there's some key concepts there. But one discussion that we had a bit that I heard concerns about was the idea of prescribing generics versus prescribing name brand drugs, where the name brand drugs are typically substantially more expensive than a generic, oftentimes perfectly equivalent to one another, but that there would be agreements in place, Mr. President, where the name brand would be required as part of a deal potentially in a vertically integrated PBM and insurance entity, and that coupons or rebates would be given as a substantial portion of that differential. So imagine arbitrarily a drug that the name brand sells for $1,000, the generic sells for $100. Well, there would be a circumstance where the $1,000 drug would be required, but a $500 coupon or rebate would be paid back. So it would still be a net loss, but it would look like a savings because profit's effectively being made by an entity. So good deal for those that can get it. This is an attempt through these 2 additional Romanettes that would restrict a pharmacy benefit manager from engaging in those types of practices. So Romanet 4 says that a PBM basically shall not restrict the use or prescribing of any generic prescription drug approved by the Federal Food and Drug Administration as an alternative to a name brand prescription drug unless the describing physician includes a notation that the prescription shall be dispensed as written or other similar language. The concept there is dispensed as written, Mr. President. Some circumstances, there is a chemical or biological difference between the generic and the name brand such that there is a desire to use the name brand. That's apparently common practice, so that language was allowed. If the medical provider, if the healthcare provider believes that it's essential, it certainly can be allowed, but otherwise there wouldn't be a restriction on the use of generic. It seems that that would save money for EGI. I have been hearing since this amendment came into existence that maybe that's not the case, which gives me great concern. If this doesn't save money, what are we doing? And the Romanet 5 provides financial or other incentives for the use of a specific name brand drug, prescription drug, for any reason. In other words, specifically name brands, this would prohibit incentives to use name brands. And anecdotally, I think I just heard that that would cost EGI around $16 million if we prohibited incentives to use name brands. So, Mr. President, I'm going to ask that this be divided. Lines 1 through 4 would go with either division. Division 1 would be lines 5 through 11. And Division 2 would be 12 through 13. On Division 1, which is Romanet 4, I would ask the body to vote aye. Hopefully, it's perfectly reasonable not to restrict the use of generic prescriptions and provide this provision as dispensed as written. And I hope the body will support that. I'd be happy to answer any questions or discussion or anything else on Romanet 4, which is Division 1.
Division 1, any discussion? Division 1, any discussion? Back to you, Senator Rothfuss.
I just call for the question.
Okay, question being called. This is on Division 1 of second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 36. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Now on Division 2, Senator.
Mr. President, on Division 2, I will be withdrawing it upon conclusion of a couple of thoughts. Regrettably, I don't have a lot of details on how or why Romanet 5 could cost EGI $16 million. But if it does, we should all be terrified that there are programs in place in our vertically integrated PBM interaction with EGI such that prohibiting or providing prohibiting the provision of financial or other incentives for the use of a specific name brand prescription drug costs us money. So there must be substantial incentives built into this vertically integrated system such that it would cost us if we ended those. But I can imagine, Mr. President, that the people of the state of Wyoming are coming out ahead on this deal where we have these rebates and coupons in place. So with that, Mr. President, I will withdraw Romanet 5, but it looks like there's discussion. I won't withdraw it until the time is right.
Yeah, let's, before we do the full withdrawal, let's go to Senator Scott and then Senator Hicks in that order.
Mr. President, the question I would have was, I can see if the financial incentive was just essentially an incentive for the PBM to do something that might not be in the customer's interest. That if there was language included in here that permitted financial incentives that reached the customer or the plan that was paying on and paying for the customer and reduce the cost to the customer that way, that's a different matter. Yeah, that's as simple as cutting the price, 10% off kind of thing that we normally see as a commercial thing. So I'm wondering if this could be reworded in a way that an incentive that was passed through to the customer or to the customer's insurance company, which would have the effect of reducing the price that they had to charge the customer. It gets complicated because you got to make sure it gets through the ultimate customer. And the insurance company, you give them an incentive, and eventually you add enough of those up, they can reduce the overall cost of the insurance product. So it requires some careful thought. But I think the evil that you're trying to get at is the financial incentive, which the middleman can essentially put in his pocket to the ultimate harm of the customer, the way some of these things work. So it's more, it isn't quite as simple as we would like it to be. But Mr. President, I wonder if there's a possibility there. And it would require some careful thought, Mr. President, in the wording of that.
Let's collect one more for Senator Roth with Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I object to withdrawal of Division 2, and I would ask that you vote aye to provide some incentives to answer the questions that were posed by my tall colleague from Natrona County and the proposition that the amendment actually asks. And so this would really incentivize the answers to those questions. So I object to the withdrawal and ask that you vote aye on Division 2.
Okay, so we have both comments and an objection to the withdrawal. Let's go to Senator Hutchings. We'll be back to you, Senator Rothfuss, in a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Getting with the pharmacists and speaking to them about this amendment, we really appreciate the senator for bringing it. And it was kind of interesting that he met with the same opposition that we have during the interim study of this particular subject. Every time we wanted to do something, we were told it would be millions and millions of dollars, and there was never any substantial proof. It's just, they just said it. And that was enough in some instances for us to back up. That's why we want to do the division in the dates so that we can get substantial information. So with your amendment, if you choose not to withdraw that particular part, we could leave it in, and that could go in the section that will be in 2023, so we can get the data on this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rothfuss, it looks like it's back to you, and in there you have an objection to the withdrawal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I think that's perfectly reasonable then to leave it in if we want a full cost accounting of where that $16 million comes from. If we have the delayed effective date, that gives the opportunity then to remedy if there is good justification or if there's better language here that achieves the objective that's laid out by the good tall senator from Trona County. And I think then that before calling for the vote, I'll just say that I know I would like to see a full accounting of that $16 million. Why? Why is that the number? How is that the number? Show me the details. And I assume the rest of the chamber, based on this upcoming vote, may well like to see that also, Mr. President. On and for.
On and for Division 2. Withdrawal's been pulled back, so all those in favor of Division 2, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Division 2 has passed. All right. With that, then, Division 1 and 2 passed. This is on second reading amendment number 2 to Senate File 36. Back on the bill. Senate File 36, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 43, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 43, Community College District Elections.
There are no amendments. Senate File 43, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File...
Mr. Chairman, can you turn off my mic?
I can do that. Senate File 61, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 61, Sage Grouse Game Bird Farms, no certification expiration 2.
There are no amendments. Senate File 61, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 90, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 90, Capital Financing Select Committee, membership.
There are no amendments. Senate File 90, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Senate File 97, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 97, Change in Party Affiliation.
There are no amendments. Senate File 97, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Senate File 112, second reading of the Senate File.
Senate File 112, General Government Reports 2.
Senate File 112, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. Bills on 3rd reading and final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list?
Mr. President, we do have a consent list. I move the 3rd reading consent list, which is as follows. Senate File 26, District Judge Positions, Authorization and Funding. Senate File 47, Carbon Storage and Sequestration Liability. Senate File 48, 2022 Large Project Funding. Senate File 53, Local Government Liability Pool Amendments. Senate File 68, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations Amendments. Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act.
Would anyone like any of these bills removed from the consent list? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, On Senate File 26, let me review the list for you. Senate File 26, District Judge Positions, Authorization and Funding. Senate File 47, Carbon Storage and Sequestration Ability. Senate File 48, 2022 Large Project Funding. Senate File 53, Local Government Liability Pool Amendments. Senate File 68, Decentralized Autonomous Organization Amendments. And Senate File 102, Second Amendment Protection Act. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson. Baldwin. Whitman. Boner. Bouchard. Case. Cooper. Driscoll. Ellis. French. Furphy. Guru. Hicks. Hutchings. James. Kinsky. Kolb. Cost. Landon. McEwen. Nethercott. Pappas. Perkins. Rothfuss. Salazar. Schuler. Scott. Steinmetz. Wasserberger. James. Excuse me, Mr. President.
Go ahead and close it.
James. On the consent list, aye. President Dockstader.
Aye.
On the consent list, 30 aye. Senate File 26, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 26, 30 aye. Senate File 47, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 47, 30 aye. Senate File 48, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 48, 30 aye. Senate File 53, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 53, 30 aye. Senate File 68, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 68, 30 aye. Senate File 102, are there any changes? James, aye to no. Bouchard, aye to no. McEwen, aye to no. Beitman, aye to no. Salazar, aye to no. French, aye to no. Rothfuss, aye to no. Hicks, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 102, 22 aye, 8 no.
Having, having received the, please. Did you
The
close the
vote's
vote?
closed.
Vote's closed. Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 26, Senate File 47, Senate File 48, Senate File 53, Senate File 68, Senate File 102 have passed the Senate. Senator Beitman,
Privilege of the floor to explain my vote, please.
please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's probably a shocker having a Second Amendment guy vote no on a Second Amendment bill, but I just wanted to explain my vote to my constituents. I was a co-sponsor on another bill that dealt with the exact same subject, Senate File 87, and that bill was resoundingly defeated on introduction, 20-9. I felt that was the superior bill. I don't like, the kind of the politics involved with what I assume was the reason why that bill went down. And it's unfortunate. I think this body can do better. And I better stop there. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hicks.
Mr. Chairman, I want to explain my vote. I want to make absolutely certain, Mr. Chairman, if this bill would be substantially changed in the House of Representatives, that I would be guaranteed a position on the conference committee to go down and work that out, to maintain the integrity of the bill as it just passed out of this body.
Thank you. Further comments, Senator Case?
Mr. Chairman, just by way of talking about this it is true that you need to appoint a no vote to the conference committee, but you don't have to pick any particular no votes. And it is custom and common for people to have the sponsor of the bill be part of the conference committee, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm not sure in this situation, since there were other no votes, and you're kind of bound to appoint both sides, that accomplished that guarantee of a conference committee. You control that, sir, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cole?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to explain my vote. I feel like I did vote for the superior bill, and I was happy to cast my vote in the way I did. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll?
I'll pile on a little bit. I support our law enforcement. There's a reason we had two bills, and one of them was clearly supported by our law enforcement community. And for me, I'll catch some kickback in my community. I will stand behind my law enforcement, my county attorneys, and the people that actually enforce the laws and do it on the ground, always in this body. So my vote is a vote of support for the law enforcement, for what they felt like was a superior bill, that was the most effective bill that could come out. That was why I voted my way.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Senator Bouchard?
Let's make sure my mic's working today. Is it working good?
You are on.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I guess since we're getting up and explaining votes, I've worked on pro-gun legislation in this at the Capitol for over a decade. I don't think anybody questions my vote when I vote against a supposedly pro-gun bill. What's interesting about what was said, though, because I talked to some of the law enforcement this morning, and they didn't have any of the information that I had on the bill that we ran. So it's pretty, I can say this pretty confidently, that they were given wrong information about what was going on. So, and it's all going to come out in the wash. So I'm glad that we had the vote, and I'm glad everybody took a vote, because we know which side everybody's on. Thank you, Mr. President.
And we gave everybody a little further discussion time. All right. Let's proceed. Bills on third reading. Senate File 12, third reading of the Senate file.
Senate File 12, Airport Restaurant Liquor Licenses, sponsored by Senator Anderson, an act relating to alcoholic beverages.
There is an amendment. Please read in the amendment.
Senate File 12, third reading amendment number 1, page 3, line 6, delete.
Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Once again, on this bill, I will be voting in conflict, but I did offer an amendment in an attempt, as we always do, to try to make things a better bill. All this really does is it strikes on page 3, line 6, it strikes the word shall not under any circumstances and it replaces it with may. And all I'm trying to do here is there's, in the liquor division, there's a little bit of a gray area for resort licenses where that makes allowances for things
Senator
like.
Grew, I'm going to interrupt for just
I'm
a
sorry.
moment. Let's make it formal and have you move it and then
I'm
step
sorry.
right back
I
into your
apologize.
conversation.
So thank you, Mr. President. I apologize. Still not quite awake yet. At this time, I would like to move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 12 and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Now,
Sorry.
if you need to recap anything, go ahead.
Okay. Back to our story. Anyway, what this does is it does give them the rulemaking authority at the Liquor Division, the ability to write rules to allow, if this bill passes, if it makes it all the way through, to give a resort license in an airport a vehicle to sell gift package liquor as another vehicle for them to, make money in the liquor, make money with the license. It's not meant to sell packaged liquor, but as I explained the other day, one of the facets of one of the 2 operators in an airport, and I hope to be someday in an effort to be in airports all over the state, a way to, if you have a brewery in your community and have a special brand of beer or wine or a spirit, that you would be able to sell that. And it would also be a way to promote your area, promote your products, local products, Wyoming products, out to the whole world. And that's what the genesis of this amendment is, and I hope for your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, nay. The amendment has passed. That is third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 12. We're back on the bill. Any discussion on the bill? Question? Senate File 12, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Senate File 12, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? Aye. Case? Conflict? Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? Conflict? Conflict? Ellis? Aye. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Conflict? Thank you. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinski? Aye. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? Aye. McEwen? Conflict? Thank you. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstetter?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Senate File 12, 26 aye, 4 conflict.
Senate File 12, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 12 has passed the Senate. Senator Salazar. Chair for a moment.
Senate File 99, third reading of the Senate file. Clerk, read it in, please.
Senate File 99, Public Monies, Deposits in Credit Unions, sponsored by Senator Nethercott, an act relating to public funds.
There are amendments. Can we read the amendment in?
Senate File 99, third reading amendment number 1, page 5, line 1, delete.
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 99. Folks, on the topic of an equal playing field, I'm very sensitive to these types of things. When we're dealing with public monies and we're talking about opening up the door to moving them into our friends with the credit unions, I'm very concerned about that because it isn't an equal playing field. I'm sensitive to that, folks, because every day, 5 o'clock in the morning, I got a little staff that I hire, media company based in the free market economy. They come to work, and without assistance, government assistance, I just simply have to pay them to do their job. But they go straight up against a fully funded government operation, another media operation across the state. And that's hard because when it comes time to pay my people and make payroll and make sure that the taxes are paid, I have to do it off of the free market economy. When it comes time to repair my equipment or send an engineer up to the top of the mountain to get a radio tower up and running, I do it off of a free market Wyoming Main Street business. I make it happen that way. No government assistance. And that's hard. And folks, it's not easy post-COVID. It almost reminds me of the 2008 recession, where I had to pick it all up, rebuild it, redesign it, and do it entirely different again. Now post-COVID, picking it up and trying new things and trying to make it off a free market economy. There's nobody that guarantees that there'll be money to fix my equipment or pay my people or make payroll. So I'm very sensitive about an equal playing field. So with that, I bring you this amendment, folks. And I'm just simply saying that when the credit unions start to deal with public money, they're under the same rules as our banks. And maybe my emphasis would be small banks. We had a little bank that started up just simply because the big banks weren't giving the small town service that we were accustomed to. There'd been a sellout, so a group of local people came together and created a bank. And they worked very hard over the years to make that little bank work. It does. In fact, it's become the dominant bank in my area. Locally owned bank, local investors, just simply because it's important. They thought it was important that they have that local service. So here we go, opening up an opportunity to level the playing field with all the rules, without all the rules in place. So I bring you this amendment, number 1, that if the credit unions are allowed to do this in Wyoming, they're subject to federal income tax, like a bank. The Community Reinvestment Act of 1977, like a bank. And all the consumer protection laws then applicable to Wyoming financial institutions. So I bring you third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 99 to equal the playing field across Wyoming in these small communities. Ask for your approval.
discussion? Seeing Senator Nethercott.
On and against the amendment, Mr. Chairman, I think we all know what this bill tries to do, which is exactly what we are prohibited from doing, which is picking winners and losers, which is using, I believe, an unlawful means of quote unquote trying to level a playing field by restricting equal access to public funds from one entity over another for no other reason that a federal regulation associated with one entity is perceived as unfair. And not only is it perceived, I agree that it is. But again, this issue is not here to resolve that. If this body would like to do that in the future, it certainly can. But subjecting this bill and this amendment to federal regulation is contrary to our beliefs here, certainly, and in effect would kill the bill. And I would urge your resistance, your resistance to this particular amendment.
Senator Furphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's go back and think about how credit unions were established. I'm in favor of credit unions. They were originally established for a group of employees getting together, putting their money together to form a credit union to make car loans and maybe even home loans. That was their purpose, as a group to fund themselves. Guess what? The banks didn't object to that. That's what a credit union should be for. And banks, sure, they make some money off of consumer loans, but I shouldn't use just banks, but financial institutions. Let's think about what these public funds are used in banks and financial institutions. They fund ag loans, small business loans, commercial real estate loans, etc., in communities to help build the communities. And what are we doing? That's public money that's used to fund those loans in our community. So to say credit unions ought to be part of the Community Reinvestment Act, that's what banks and other financial institutions are audited on. Are they putting the money back in the community? Are they helping the community grow, etc.? Not just to use public money to help shareholders of a credit union make a little more money. So I'm very much in favor of this amendment, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.
Other discussion? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, on and against the amendment and this allegation that I know we all have seen in our own daily lives, which is untrue, that our credit unions don't give back in their communities. You see that in your local sports organizations, in the local fundraisers that they participate in their charitable organizational giving, which is profound, as well as the banks, right? And let us be done with this. I asked LSO to provide how often in the last 10 years this issue has come up and put us all in this terrible position of our friends that are bankers, that we care deeply about and respect their opinions and serve within the community, as well as the credit unions. It's not about that, right? Both of those organizations and financial institutions give greatly to this state and to our communities. And notably, the genesis of this bill is because one of those little small town credit unions serves a population of a town that a bank doesn't find worthwhile, thus necessitating the need. So how many times have we had to deal with this issue pitting us against credit unions and bankers? Since 2001, of course this year, 2017, 2015, 2009, 2003, 2001, and I didn't have LSO go back before the last 10 years. Let us put this arbitrary issue to bed, allow this equal playing field to take place, recognize the value of both of these financial institutions. I urge your defeat of this amendment.
Any other discussion? President Dockstader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the discussion. Folks, you got a track race going on. You send your competitor around the other side of the track, let them have a halfway start in front of you. Got a football game going on. You let your competitor rack up 3 touchdowns, just hit the scoreboard and give them 3 touchdowns out ahead, giving them an advantage without all the rules and regs. So the banks have to play by the rules and the regs, and our credit unions don't. Why not create a situation where they come to the table under those same rules and regulations, and offer those same services. I don't doubt the services of our credit unions or our banks. Just bring it down to an equal playing field. Put it in the category where they have to also meet the same rules and regs that a bank does. This is a time. It's not time for another bill. It's not time for a separate bill. Don't go out in that direction. This is the bill to do it on. And folks, if this hasn't passed this many times, there's a reason. There's a reason it hasn't passed. This is the time to get it corrected with this amendment. Don't keep trying to come back year after year and find a way, a loophole to slip it in there. Just allow the credit unions to play on the same field, equal footing with the banks. Again, banks have to meet a federal income tax. They have to have the Community Reinvestment Act of 1997. All consumer protection laws applicable to the banks. Why not have credit unions meet that same criteria? On and for the amendment.
Ayes and noes being called for. Chief Clerk will take the roll.
Senate File 99, third reading amendment number 1. Roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? No. Beitman? No. Boner? Aye. Bouchard? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Driscoll? Aye. Ellis? No. French? Aye. Furphy? Aye. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. James? No. Kinski? Aye. Cole? No. Cost? No. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? No. Pappas? No. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? No. Salazar?
No.
No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Steinmetz? Aye. Wasserberger? Aye. President Dockstader? Aye. Kinski, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. On the amendment, 12 aye, 18 no.
Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 99 has failed. Thanks. I'm sorry.
That concludes third readings. Oh, that's right. Bills. Thank you. Oh, how did I slip? Freudian. It's in a drawer here somewhere. Bills on third reading and final pass. Okay, we've got Senate File 99. Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the Senate, roll call, please.
Senate File 99, third reading roll call. Anderson? Aye. Baldwin? Aye. Beitman? Aye. Boner? No. Bouchard? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Driscoll? No. Ellis? Aye. French? No. Furphy? No. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. James? Aye. Kinski? No. Cole? Aye. Cost? Aye. Landon? No. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Perkins? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Steinmetz? No. Wasserberger? No. President Dockstader? No. Anderson, aye to no. Hutchings, aye to no. Closing vote. Closing vote. Closed. Senate File 99, 14 aye, 16 no.
Senate File 99, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 99 has failed to pass the Senate. All right. Consideration of bills on general file. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole. Your bill's up.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Senate moves into committee of the whole. Senator Ellis, looks like you're in charge of the Senate today.
But they are, they're not controlled by the National Credit Union. That's the rules and regulations, that's the government.
Committee of the Whole will come to order. Please stop clapping.
I'd rather see the state charter bank.
All righty, Committee of the Whole has come to order. The first bill for our consideration is Senate File 85. Will the reading clerk read Senate File 85?
Senate File 85, Child Care Facility Certification Exemption, an act relating to children, sponsored by Senator Perkins, was referred to Committee Number 1, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Senators Cooper, French, Kolb, Cost, and Nethercott. Senator Nethercott, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the due pass recommendation of Senate File 85. To explain that bill, I call on Senator Perkins.
Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, for your consideration, we have, this is really, as I explained on introduction, it's a deregulation bill. Have talked with the department about this, and the director in particular of DFS had input upon this bill. In fact, there was language proposed. We ran it by the director. She came back and actually provided much of the language that we have here, been a collaborative effort with her. The problem with this is that under existing statute, if you've got a facility that has children in it, you're subject to that aren't yours. You're subject to child care licensing, and there's a lot of after-school programs and summer camps that have been outside of that for a long time, and the department's kind of looked the other way. But the only exemptions that would seemingly apply to many of these types of organizations, there's one for youth ranches, basically, and another one for summer camps. And so if you don't have these exceptions, then you ultimately have to license for child care, which includes daycare. We have a number of youth organizations that provide after-school care, youth development. They do educational programs, they do recreational programs. They do it for children before and after school and summer camps. We have these, some of them are large national organizations that deal with boys and girls and other young men, the young men and young women's Christian organizations. We have community organizations across all of our states, big towns, little towns, and these people provide significant after school and sometimes before school care. And so what this does is just creates an exception for them. The department's in support of this. In fact, they're glad to have it because otherwise they seem they're in a betwixt and between about having whether they license or whether they don't. So this creates this new exception, which is the heart of the bill. The meat of the bill is the exception you see beginning on page 1, after programs that operate primarily when school is not in session, including before and after school and during summer months, and exclusively serve children required to attend school by state law, are required to organize to promote childhood learning, youth development, educational enrichment, recreational or other character building activities, and adhere to all local and applicable health, safety, and fire codes and regulations. The reason that there's some discussion about the word while it was under page 2, line 2, operate primarily, that the division actually wanted that, quote, squishy language because of, you have, particularly in COVID, you have times when some people are in school, some people are not in school, some people are attending at online in other districts, and so that's why they have that little bit of squishy language in 2 and 3, why we're talking about primarily when school's not in session. Additionally, you have some districts actually close on Fridays for various reasons, and others aren't. So that's why that's relatively flexible. But these, it's supported by the groups that are doing these things, whether they're big national organizations or it's a little community organization in your home. I've heard no one speak against the bill. It doesn't mean that there's not opposition to it out there, but I haven't heard any yet and would ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The Senate File 85 has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 78. Will the reading clerk please read it in?
Senate File 78, Language Proficiency, Seal of Biliteracy, sponsored by Senator Ellis, an act relating to education. Was referred to Committee Number 4, which returned to committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Beitman, Ellis, Rothfuss, Salazar, and Scott. Senator Scott, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Scott?
Mr. Chairman, I move in the
Hold on, Senator Scott.
the recommendation that Senate File 78 do pass. There was no standing committee amendment. I yield to Senator Ellis for an explanation of the Senate file. There is a standing committee amendment.
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was a standing committee amendment. I'd ask that it be read in.
Senate File 78, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 3, line 5, delete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd move Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 78. I'll get into the meat of the bill, but this is a conforming amendment that would better align with how school districts have to provide certain reporting requirements. August 1st was a little too soon. October 15th is generally the date they take or report information. So I'd ask the body to vote aye.
Discussion on the amendment?
Question.
All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 78, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 78 has passed. We are back on the bill. Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a pretty straightforward bill that was brought to me by several foreign language teachers that have an association in Wyoming. And really what this does, it's a distinction that's conferred on a Wyoming graduate, and it shows and demonstrates that they're proficient in English and one or more language. Presently, across the country, there are 45 states, including the District of Columbia, that offer a statewide seal of biliteracy. Wyoming is one of 5 states that does not. So why is this important? Well, the seal of biliteracy encourages students to pursue biliteracy, and it can be evidence of skills that are attractive to future employers and college admission offices. So because Wyoming is one of 5 states that does not offer a statewide seal, bilingual Wyoming students in most of our districts are at a competitive disadvantage compared to other high school graduates and among themselves. We currently have 3 districts that offer the seal, but they're doing it in a different kinds of fashion. Some of the districts are a little nervous to put it on the high school transcripts. So what this would do, Mr. Chairman, is require the Department of Education through the state superintendent to develop a state seal of biliteracy program. You'll see that there's no fiscal note attached to this. To prove your biliteracy, there are a number of exams that are currently available in school districts already. Districts also have the ability and flexibility, if they don't want to pay for the cost of administering the test or for the test itself, can charge that of the student directly. We heard in testimony that the cost of this test is anywhere between $17 to $25 per student. However, for districts that offer this, Laramie County being an example, there are about 30 to 40 students every year who get their seal just through Laramie County, and that cost is about $1,400, and our district covers that cost for the students. So the cost is minimal. And then you'll see on page 2 of the bill that it would amend the duties of the Board of Trustees to allow them to offer and confer this seal of biliteracy. The amendment simply requires that districts provide information about the number of students, what languages they were tested in to the department, so we can keep track of how often this is being utilized. I'm unaware of any opposition. This is one that will help our students, particularly those when they apply for colleges and in the workforce, to be able to demonstrate that they're proficient in more than one language. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Discussion? Division being called. All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the favorable recommendation that Senate File 78 do pass, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Senate File 78 has passed the committee of the whole.
The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 84. Will the reading clerk please read it in?
Senate File 84, Mineral Royalties Proportional Severance Tax Relief, sponsored by the Federal Natural Resource Management Committee, an act relating to severance taxes. It was referred to Committee Number 9, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes Senators Anderson, Beitman, Cooper, and Wasserberger. No, Senator Rothfuss. Senator Anderson, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Anderson?
I move that when the committee of the whole rise to report, do so with the favorable recommendation that Senate File 84 do pass. And to explain the bill is some volunteer, right here. Senator Boner.
Okay, Senator Boner, let's, I believe there's a standing committee amendment. I'll have the clerk read that in.
Senate File 84, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 2, line 9, after.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll go ahead and take care of that standing committee amendment a little bit later. I will explain the bill first. Fellow senators, this bill is in response. It was crafted by your Select Federal Natural Resource Management Committee in close consultation with the Department of Revenue as well as stakeholders throughout the state to provide some level of stability to important industries in the state as they look at the possibility, the distinct possibility of an increase in the federal royalty rate. This, just to give a little bit of context, a little bit of background, it was published on the Federal Register not too long ago, then immediately rescinded, that you can expect an increase from 12.5% royalty rate to about 18.75% royalty rate, definitely with oil and gas, but potentially with coal as well. And so what this bill does is anticipates that increase, clearly an attempt to make public land states like Wyoming less competitive compared to states that don't have the federal bureaucracy associated with developing these resources, and an overall effort to suppress our mineral industry, domestic industry here in the United States. And so what this bill does, it focuses on what the state can do to help counter that instability, that lack of certainty. And it also does so in a way that doesn't put our revenue streams at risk. In fact, it adds stability to those revenue streams. As we go through the bill, you'll see why that is also very important as we look at the volatile nature of our commodity-based economy, the volatile nature of the revenue streams that depend upon that economy. This provides stability, absolute or close to absolute stability for state revenue streams. It provides a limited measure of stability for our industry. So the way that we do that, you can look at this as a way, a series of, the way we guarantee, I guess, that the state isn't going to lose money on this, is there's a series of sideboards, a series of limitations as to just how much
of a refund that the state does give based off severance taxes that are already being paid by these industries. And so it's important to note, first and foremost, that we're only talking about the difference between the old royalty rates and the new royalty rates. So in the example that we got a little sneak peek there, that's be about a 6.25% increase. We're only dealing with that 6.25%, not the full 12.5, full 18.75%, wherever it may be. So within that difference, and you'll see this is on, we'll start on page 3 of the bill, talking about the refund on page 2, but mostly on page 3. It's, sorry, on line 7. We're only talking about the increase, the amount equal to the increase of the royalty as based on the July 1st, 2021 benchmark. Once again, that's 12.5%. You then multiply that by the share, the state share of those federal minimum royalties. Right now, that's 49%. We didn't put that hard and fast number in there because that could change. We want to make sure that the statute remains adaptable to changing circumstances. And then on page 3, line 15, you'll see we further reduce that by 25%. And that gets into the disruptive nature that this policy change will have on our state and local revenue streams. Actually, when you increase the royalty rate, you decrease some severance taxes, you decrease ad valorem taxes, because that is a deduction on both those taxes. The royalty rate is a deduction. So we're accounting for all of that after significant input from our Department of Revenue. And so what you have ultimately is a very much a reduced opportunity for a refund that guarantees that the state will not lose any money in this deal whatsoever. It keeps us even. It bases refund based on the amount of increased revenue we would receive, and prevents us from becoming more dependent upon these industries for our revenue streams. There's an additional sideboard. Since we are basing this off of severance taxes, these companies will always pay that 1.5% constitutional amount, and we felt that was an important sideboard, even though it's extremely unlikely we would ever get to that point. It's also important to note the methodology that we're using to achieve this is that the effective producer would have to apply to the Department of Revenue, and then they would then process the refund. So it alleviates the administrative burden on the Department of Revenue, keeps everything nice and clean, and frankly, given that fact, it's a strong possibility that the state and local government still see an increase in revenue, assuming that not every last operator is going to be applying for a refund. So going back to page 2 to sort of round out the concept, this will be based on the severance tax account. Obviously, we'll be realizing an increase. Our FMRs, so we'll have that transfer in a proportional amount to the severance tax refunds be transferred from the FMR account to our severance tax account to even out those revenue streams. That's really important because those revenue streams fund slightly different constituencies. Those have been thoroughly negotiated by this body, and we don't want to upset that balance any more than we need to, or allow the federal government to upset that balance for us. This keeps our state and local revenue streams as close as possible to being even. It gives some level of certainty for our oil, gas, coal producers in the face of a federal policy that is meant to suppress production. And so that's what the bill does, Madam Chair. I'll go ahead and explain I'll move and explain the standing committee amendment because there's additional opportunity for adjustments as well. So,
Senator Boner, would you move the amendment? It's been read in.
okay, yes. I move standing committee amendment number 1, Senate File 84, and ask for your favorable consideration. I guess we can talk about this now. So as I mentioned before, we're reducing the amount available for refund by 25%. That's to compensate for the fact that these oil, gas, coal companies would already be paying less in severance and ad valorem taxes. What this amendment does is it authorizes an additional transfer from the FMR account to the severance tax account to make the severance account whole and make sure that we don't see a disruption among the constituencies that are funded by that severance income account. So that's what the standing committee amendment does. It basically takes that additional 12.5% and transfer it from the FMRs to the severance tax account. I'll be the first to admit that we weren't able to get to a point where we're able to compensate the ad valorem aspect of it because there are over 600 different tax districts in the state of Wyoming. I think that's something, if this bill passes, or even if it doesn't, we could continue to look at and find a clean way of doing that, but we just don't have quite enough time to go ahead and accomplish that at this point. But that's what the standing committee amendment does. It's the option of making our severance tax account whole. And I'll just go ahead and take any questions on the amendment.
Questions on the amendment or discussion on the amendment? Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. On and for the standing committee amendment, and it probably would have passed anyway, but I just want to make sure that a couple things. First of all, the magnitude of the legislation we're talking about is on the order of $150 million per year of revenue differential if it were to go into effect and if the royalty rate were pursuant to the estimate that was provided. So I'm just saying that to make sure that everybody realizes it's an important bill to consider. We might not all agree on which way to vote on it, but I hope you're paying attention. It's a lot of money. With regard to this amendment, though, it's a good amendment whether you like the bill or not, because it does what the bill is trying to do, and it's a necessary component of what the bill is trying to do to balance fund flows appropriately so that federal mineral royalties and severance are paid in roughly the appropriate apportionment as they are now. So for those reasons, Madam Chairman, I would encourage the body, whether you like the bill or not, to support this amendment because it at least does it right, and then we can have the debate about whether we should or shouldn't do that right. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rothfuss. Discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Boner's motion, please, on Senate Standing Committee Amendment number 1, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment's passed. We're back on the bill. Further discussion? Senator Case?
I heard a big sigh from the Minerals Committee. Oh, Madam Chairwoman, thank you very much. So, Madam Chairwoman, this is, we're trying to do something nice for some very good friends in the state of Wyoming. The mineral industry is very important to us. It's important to our schools. It's important to every taxpayer in the state of Wyoming. Your taxes are less because of the mineral industry. Minerals are under siege, carbon-based minerals especially. Concerns about global warming, concerns about rising sea levels have led to policy changes in Washington and many state capitals to reduce our reliance on carbon-based minerals. It's happening. It's an inevitable thing, perhaps, Madam Chairwoman. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to condone it. I'm just trying to say it's a reality. It could be a reality in our future for a long time to come. We're not going to be able to hold the line, and as federal policies dial in, we're not going to be able to sustain the makeup of the money. This sort of acts like there's no impact, but there's a tremendous impact because there's an impact of an opportunity cost of our lost share of the higher federal mineral royalties. So we're going to take the share that we would have gotten and keep ourselves whole. But make no question, there are people out there that want to put us out of the carbon business. And this is part of it, raising the cost. But we're leaving a lot of money on the table if we try to offset what the federal government is going to do. And this is money in an industry that, I would argue, is closing. The opportunities are closing. The opportunities in the next 50 years are not going to be like the opportunities in the last 50 years. When we get to the end of the 50 years, we're going to have left a tremendous amount of money on the table, when we might as well share with the federal mineral royalties. And we have data to show, Madam Chairwoman, that the level of the royalties, the level of production-based taxes over a moderate range do not affect decisions to produce. Companies are looking at places to drill, and there are places that are all around the country, but all around the world. What mostly drives a production decision and an exploration decision is the geology, Madam Chairwoman. And then the stability. I've worked in oil and gas countries. I've worked in Bolivia, Venezuela, Nigeria, and the amount, those are wonderful producing areas, but the amount of effort that a company has to go through to be in those areas is just astounding. They like to drill domestically. They like the fact that our government works, our courts work. They know the rules of the game here. We're not going to encourage more, discourage less production. We're just going to leave money on the table. And we did a study to prove this. It was called the Mineral Tax Study. It was published in the American Journal of Economic Review. And it was an astoundingly good study that showed exactly that. We're just leaving money on the table because this level of tax changes is not going to affect production decisions. Urge your defeat of the bill.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator French.
Madam Chair, there's nobody in the room that's more pro.
Senator French, can you get closer to your microphone, please?
Yes, is that better?
Thank you.
There's nobody in here that's more pro oil and gas and coal than I am. I mean, it's what an effect up in the Bighorn Basin where I live, you know. My question is this needed when oil's 93? And since Russia is doing their thing in Ukraine, it's pushing $100 a barrel. Can you answer, would it be good if we had like a prorated thing? If oil dropped below $80, whatever that thing is, and the sliding down to whatever the number is, $50 a barrel, that you get the full relief. At 80, you know, it is graduated. Is there that need at $93 a barrel, almost 100 today, but that may back off?
Further discussion, Senator Beitman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm on in favor of this bill and really would like to give a shout out to the good chairman of Ag and our senator from Converse County on all the work he's put into this. It is a very tricky and detailed bill on how to keep that revenue neutral, and he's put a lot of work into this to make it work. I think it makes sense. I think we need to balance out any potential increase in federal royalties to our producers here in Wyoming. Wyoming is already tough to do business with our federal nexus, extending into just about every drilling and spacing unit over good ground in this state. And we also have sage grouse that other states don't have. We've got mule deer corridors to deal with. We just passed legislation on that here recently. Other issues that other states like Texas don't have. So anything we can do to help the mineral industry, it is our golden goose, and I'm still not ready to throw dirt on them yet, especially our coal producers are having a banner year. To answer my good friend from the other side of the Bighorn's question about whether or not the price matters, I don't think so. I think the royalty rate matters and the cost of doing business matters, and that's what this bill is aimed to do. And so I urge your support on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to go over a few of those points, first of all, to my colleague from the basin, I'm sure we can have that discussion. I think that's almost expected. It's not exactly the same as other bills that we've had discussing the severance tax rate, though. And I think it goes back to some of the points that the revenue chairman made. I mean, I couldn't imagine considering a bill that would increase the severance tax in Wyoming. just because we could, just because maybe we get away with it. That's not a serious policy discussion in the state because we already know our reliance on these minerals is a problem. And so we don't want to have the federal government come in and basically do something similar and increase our reliance on that volatile revenue stream. For the same reason that we never, as far as I know, seriously consider increasing the tax burden on these industries right now in the state. If anything, if we're gonna find additional revenue, we need to look at other ways of accomplishing that goal. And we've passed, the Senate files even constitutional amendments, so we give opportunities for new revenue streams for, say, for example, school capital construction. We've done that. We have increased taxes, the lodging tax, for example. So we have done that work when it's necessary. And I agree with my fellow committee member from Sheridan. Yeah, there's, you know, that seems to be the trend now to say we don't need fossil fuels. I wonder how many people are still going to believe that 5 years from now. We see the actual physical consequences, the geopolitical consequences of that naivety. And that's what it is, it's naive. And until we come up with a new technology to actually replace what we have now, it's just not going to happen. And so, yeah, I don't think that we should just abandon our fossil fuel industry. We shouldn't stand by and let the tax burden increase any more than we need to on those industries. We don't need to increase our own reliance on those industries. So for all those reasons, certainly if it's something that a significant portion of the body wants to consider, we can consider a cap or a graduated scale, as the good senator from the Bighorn Basin discussed. I am open to that if we feel it's necessary. But yeah, just going over the all those arguments against, I just can't see an argument for increasing our reliance on these fuels for our revenue. And just go over some of the numbers and to give you an idea, the minority floor leader is absolutely correct. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Assuming 2018 production level, that's $38 million or 38 million barrels on federal land. $65 a barrel increase in the royalty rate from 12.5% to 18.75%. The overall increase in the royalty paid would be about 154 million. Once you take all those deductions, you cut that in half to only account for our state share. You further reduce that by 25% to account for the lack of other taxes these producers would be paying. We're looking about $56 million or so. So those are the numbers. Like I said, I hope that we can move this bill forward. I think it's important to provide stability. That's the word, stability, not just for state and local government, but for our industry partners as well. I hope we can move it based on those considerations.
Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, I've been uneasy about this bill all along. I voted to introduce it because I thought it was an important topic that was worthy of our time discussion, even in the budget session. But I'm starting to crystallize what's making me uneasy about it. Were a couple things. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, part of what we're doing here is trying to make up for some harm the federal government has done, and I suspect that it's more ideologically motivated than the constant demand for more revenue so they can spend more back there. They seem to have disconnected their spending from their revenue anyhow, and are getting us in considerable trouble over it. And that's, but I don't see, they're likely to hit all kinds of industries. And all of us, a lot of us individually. And I don't see how we can make up for what they may do to us. So what we're doing with this is we're isolating out the mineral industry and saying, okay, we're going to try to protect them because they are so much the foundation of our economy. I can see that argument. One of the thing that is bothering me the most, Madam Chairman, we get a share of the federal mineral royalties. by the grace of the federal government. It's a law they can and have in the past changed a bit. And I can remember when it was a good deal less of a share we got. If we start saying we don't need that money, are we going to keep the same share? Are we giving ammunition to the people back there who have tried, or their predecessors have tried in the past, to reduce these federal mineral royalties, and then take a double hit, the hit that we've given ourselves, plus what they may do by taking away what they're giving us? And I think, Madam Chairman, we are at risk on both scores. So reluctantly, I'm seriously concerned as to whether passing this bill is a wise thing for us to do at this point.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to the gentleman from Bates Creek, I don't think anybody has any concept in our minds that we don't need this money. Think of it more of an investment back into our oil and gas companies and our coal companies that are investing in Wyoming. Every rig that we can encourage to drill in Wyoming is 100 direct jobs. That's 100 good jobs, $25, $30, $35 an hour or more. That goes right back into our economy. As we're making this transition from carbon-based energy to renewables or nuclear, we still have to maintain the people that are here and our partners that are supporting us across the state of Wyoming. That is the minerals that are producing here now. We need to encourage them to come to Wyoming and to invest in Wyoming, and understand that investment in them is also investment in us. Thank you, ma'am.
We are on the bill. Senator Boner.
Okay, just briefly to respond to some of the concerns. I point out that federal government can change the royalty rate via administrative means. And it's my understanding that in order to change the state's share, that would require congressional action. I believe that's what happened, that was 10, 15 years ago. And this is set in US code, the state's proportion. So I could be mistaken on that, but I think that we shouldn't mistake the relative ease with which they can raise the royalty rates with the ease with which they can change our state's share. So I hope that abates some of those concerns. Also, just pushing back the idea that, we're talking about a 2 to 3% change effectively. If you want to look in terms of the rate of the increase in the royalty rate, I guess we can refer to my colleague from Sheridan who has negotiated those deals. 2%, 3% is a big deal. So either this bill's a big deal or it isn't. We have to make up our minds. I happen to believe it is a big deal. And once again, it's not a question of analysis of what's economical, what's going to make a profit, what isn't. We have to take into account that there are states that have significant basins that have been developed that do not have to deal with this federal nexus. So it's a matter of competing with them and being more competitive with them and getting more and more rigs. Even 1 or 2 makes a big difference, as my colleague from the basin pointed out. So hope we can support the bill.
Senator Kinski, then Senator Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share with my friend from Bates Creek that same sense of uneasiness, because I like the bill, I like the concept, but it's kind of like when a reporter asks you a question that you refuse to answer because it's too speculative, with a lot of hypotheticals built into it. We don't know if the feds are going to do anything. We don't know when they'll do it. And most importantly, we don't know what the final configuration of it will be. We can pass this and find out we were too clever by half, that there might have been some unintended consequence in what we enacted. as my friend from Bates Creek said, it's a good conversation to have. And we don't have to, I think, decide it in this session. We have time. If the feds did anything, it takes a while for it to move through Congress. And if it's enacted, it takes a while for it to become effective. And then it takes still longer for the regulations to be promulgated. And so I think the right time to do this is when we actually see the final configurations of whatever it is they do, if they do it. I just worry that when we're trying to act without having something more definitive in front of us, we may have some unintended consequences. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, and in particular, I'm well aware that to change our percentage takes a change in the federal law. We've had several close calls where somebody tried to do that in the middle of the night on us. And it can be the way they do things, not in separate bills, but putting everything into one great big massive bill. We are putting a lot of pressure on our delegation to find that particular knife before it goes all the way through us. And the way they do business back in Washington, that can be very difficult. So I think that even though it's in the federal code, and that's what it would take to change it, they won't do that with a separate bill. They'll stick it in the middle of some big reconciliation thing or some portion of it. And I think we had one change that did hurt us some, and it came suddenly. The risk is there, Madam Chairman, the risk is ever present.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Anderson?
Madam Chairman, I think there's no doubt that this present administration in Washington, D.C. would like to do this. The fact that they haven't done it yet must mean that they don't have the votes yet. And like the senator from Bates Creek says, they'll try to slip it through in the dark of the night. I think it's important that our industry know that we're prepared to do this and would support them. Whether or not we do it right now, the message is there that if the federal government did that, we'd be prepared to do this. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I both understand the support and share concerns with this legislation. The support side comes from the fact that there's no question that we've relied on taxation of the minerals industry for decades, 4 or 5 decades now, since the mid-'70s or early '70s, when this body and the body down the hall had the political courage to implement a severance tax. That was a big moment and changed every minute since. It was an incredible amount of political courage. So we rely on it, and really the minerals extractive industry, oil, gas, coal, trona, everything is where we draw most of our income, because it's the only industry that we truly and appreciably tax. The tax rates that we have for that industry result in an aggregate around 20% gross tax. It's pretty substantial. And then the rest of the industries, we really don't tax much. The challenge that we have is that we have not been willing as a body, a legislature, to step up and recognize that we have to diversify that revenue structure in any meaningful way that allows us to pass legislation like this without a negative consequence for the state. I do realize that this legislation was drafted in a way that it's trying to be neutral. But at the end of the day, we all know that we don't have a neutral budget line in the future. When you project our budgets, our expenses moving forward, and you project our revenue moving forward, it doesn't look that good, largely due to declining demand for the one thing that we do tax. So the concern I have, Madam Chairman, is that this does represent it under current market. It's right around $100 million. I went back, checked the spreadsheet at $90. assuming the 2018 figures that the good senator from the chairman of the Ag Committee used, 38 million barrels, comes right around $100 million of additional revenue. We need $100 million of additional revenue. We need a lot more than $100 million in additional revenue. If we had alternatives to consider, if we were capable of passing different revenue structures such that we would tax other industries, these would look like good policies. The challenge is we haven't done that. And from my perspective, we need all the help we can get. And if it comes from an adjustment to the federal mineral royalty rate, I would look at that as a lucky victory in the same way that I'm looking at the fact that we got all of this ARP funding this year. We got $1 billion this year of federal funds that is floating the boat on everything we're doing. This would be additional federal funds effectively, because it's a federal mineral royalty that's then split back and half of it comes to the state, almost half of it. That's a bad deal, but that's a different story. Coming back to the state. So as we look at this and contemplate giving a credit effectively, that credit should be balanced by a realistic look at the other industries that we're not generating revenue from. I can get behind that. I would love to. I've been saying that for years. I think everybody in here has heard me say that. We shouldn't be adding additional taxes to the mineral sector, but to the extent that we're not adding it elsewhere, it needs to come from someplace. And I share the concerns also of the fact that we really don't know how this is going to move forward. We don't have real answers. There is some inclination to increase the federal mineral royalty rate. But just to clarify, that's because 12.75%, which is the federal mineral royalty rate, is not a rate of royalty that anyone else in the state, whether that's fee land or state land or anyone else you can find anywhere, is willing to accept. Nobody accepts a 12.75% royalty. That was the whole purpose for reevaluating the royalty rate in the first place. It's not an acceptable amount. You can't get that in any country around the world. You can't get that in any state on state land. You can't get that. You'd be laughed out of the room if you walked into a negotiation with a private individual, a landowner, and said, 12.75. If it's good enough for the feds, it's good enough for you. Laughter would ensue. Hopefully a real offer would be put on the table and a contract would be signed. So, Madam Chairman, this is serious. This is a tremendous amount of money we're talking about. Starting off before we even see that money by crediting it back to the industry when we have no alternative strategies on the horizon for revenue seems a bit premature. Thank you.
We are on the bill. Further discussion, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to hopefully wrap this up a little bit, and certainly, your views on level of taxation that's appropriate, level of government services that are appropriate in the state are going to color your views on this bill. Completely agree. And clearly there's a difference of opinion between myself and the minority leader in terms of level of government services that are necessary. Certainly we've been successful in cutting back general funded agencies. We have passed tax increases in this body on occasion, in spite of the fact that we have always had well over $1 billion in our rainy day fund. So I do have confidence in this legislature and this institution to adequately negotiate and negotiate those challenges moving forward. Not going to get into discussion as to the merits of the royalty rate increase. I think there's a difference of opinion there. Not going to get into it. We could talk about anecdotal experience of, oil and gas companies have an opportunity to take advantage of that 12.5% royalty rate on federal land back when there was greater flexibility in developing private or state minerals, and they always were focused on that state and private minerals because of the massive regulatory burden the federal government places on this development. And so on for the bill, I think that the concerns that have been raised are largely speculative. But what we do know is that this royalty rate is coming, and we have an option here to provide stability for our industry partners as well as state and local government. I hope that you vote aye.
Okay, are you ready for the question, Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, just want to correct one misapprehension. I think it was stated that we aren't taking steps to get diverse revenue that will replace our reliance on minerals. We've got a strategy on that the voters passed in 1974, known as the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund. We have a bill on third reading tomorrow that adds to that, that prepares us for the day that we know is coming when these minerals either run out or the economy progresses to the point where they're no longer needed or no longer available to us. We do have a strategy. We are implementing it. The bill tomorrow adds to that. So I reluctantly wanted to correct the record on that particular point.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Anderson's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 84, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no.
No.
Chairs in doubt, division, all those in favor, please stand. All opposed, please stand. Tally was 17 to 11. It has passed Committee of the Whole. The next bill for our consideration is Senate File 76. Will the reading clerk please read in the Senate file?
Senate File 76, Financial Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults, sponsored by Senator Case, an act relating to banks, banking, and finance. It was referred to Committee Number 3, which returned a committee recommendation that it do pass amended. Ayes, Senators Baldwin, Case, James, Pappas, and Schuler. Senator Baldwin, acting chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Baldwin?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with a favorable recommendation on Senate File 76. There is a standing committee amendment, if we can get that read in.
Senate File 76, Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, page 7, line 13, after.
Senator Baldwin?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would pass a reading of this and the explanation of this, both the amendment and the bill, to the senator with a similar River Mountain Senator Case.
Senator Case.
Actually, I think I have a little bit more hair, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, this bill is Senate File 76, Financial Exploitation of Vulnerable Adults. It's brought to your attention by the financial institutions in the state, including the credit unions and the banks and others that want to protect their customers that they know very well when those customers are being taken advantage of. So what this is in the banking title, Madam Chairwoman. It's in Title 13, which is Banks, Banking, and Finance. And Section 1310 is Crimes, Offenses, and Penalties. Article 4, we're defining what a piece for the protection of vulnerable adults. You can see in the definitions, department is the Department of Family Services, who testified in favor of the bill. Exploitation, financial exploitation, which can include an act or omission by a person, including the use of a power of attorney or on behalf of or as the conservator or guardian of another person to obtain control through deception, intimidation, fraud, or to convert the money, assets, or other property of the other person to deprive the other person of the ownership, use, benefit, or possession of the property. Definition of financial institution is on lines 17 through 19. That's the one that the Division of Banking was there, testified in favor of the bill. They established clearly that that includes all the actors that we've had discussions about today. So including credit unions, including banks. Bottom of the page, vulnerable adult is defined in our adult protection and neglect statute under DFS. And so 1310-402 on page 4, this is some of the meat of the bill. This says what a financial institution must do if they suspect that someone is being exploited. So part A, line 4, if an employee of a financial institution has cause to believe that financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult has occurred, is occurring, or has been attempted, the employee shall notify the financial institution of the suspected financial exploitation. Now, this happens more often than you think, Madam Chairwoman, and you know, people like their local banks and they like their local credit unions, and those people know the people that deal with them. They've been handling Mrs. Jones' account for 20 years. So there's been some changes, and people inquire about how Mrs. Jones is doing. Then we find out that Mrs. Jones might be being duped by someone. It could be someone close to them, family member, could be a caregiver, could be something out of the blue. Unusual activity in Mrs. Jones's account. Maybe someone coming in with a piece of paper that was supposedly Mrs. Jones's authorization. I think you understand how this could play out, and the people at the financial institution who really have been doing business with Mrs. Jones for a long time want to help her out and want to know how they can help out. This says that the
Senator Case, can you hold on one second? If you're having conversations, can you move those off the floor? I'm having a hard time hearing. Thank you. Senator Case, please proceed.
I think they're enthusiastically talking about how good this bill is, Madam Chairwoman. So then part B, Madam Chairwoman, is if a financial institution is notified of the exploitation and what they have to do, the financial institution shall assess the suspected financial exploitation and submit a report to the Department of Family Services in the same manner as containing the same information required to be included under other types of report of abuse or neglect. The financial institution shall submit the report required by the subsection not later or earlier of, and there's some dates there. Remember, this is mandatory, but these are the financial institutions are asking for this bill. And they're asking for it for some protection, actually, Madam Chairwoman. We'll get to that. The protection comes about on page 5, lines 12 through 18. A financial institution that submits a report to the Department of suspected financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult under subsection B of this section is not required to make an additional report. I kind of got the wrong place there, but so they only have to make one report, and they need to adopt internal policies. And then, Madam Chairwoman, on page 6, lines 17, the financial institution is empowered to notify third parties. Third parties could be family members, they could be law enforcement. So it says, if a financial institution submits a report of suspected financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult to the department under this article, the financial institution may, at the time of submitting that report, also notify a third party reasonably associated with a vulnerable adult of the suspected financial exploitation. So, Mrs. Jones is being victim of exploitation. We happen to know that Mrs. Jones' son is in Arizona. Let's give Mrs. Jones' son a call. See if he knows what's going on. This lets him do that. Page 7, line 7, temporary hold on transactions. So if there is a suspicious transaction, the bank is empowered to stop it, put a temporary hold on it. Now, this wouldn't be regular withdrawals from an account, for an example. It doesn't freeze the account so that the regular normal bills get paid, but the suspicious transaction could get a hold on it. And this is where the standing committee amendment comes in on lines.
Senator Case, I believe it's been read in but not moved. Would you like to move that at this time?
I would move the standing committee amendment number 1 to Senate File 67 at this time, and thank you for that,
Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman. So lines 12 through 14, The current language says may place a hold on any transaction that involves an account of a vulnerable adult if the financial institution has, of course, submitted a report, has cause to believe the things we've talked about earlier. But it's not just, this amendment expands that a bit, Madam Chairwoman. Instead of being just the account of the vulnerable adult, what if the money has moved from one account to another account? So what the amendment does is say that after the account of the vulnerable adult, it says, or that contains the vulnerable adult's assets or property. So it makes it clear they can go where the money went, Madam Chairwoman. So I don't care when we take that up. It's at your pleasure.
Senators, discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Case's motion that Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 to Senate File 76 pass, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. The amendment has passed. Senator Case, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So if you go on further, this is all about the temporary hold on the transactions. You can see that the hold can only last for 10 days unless it's extended not to exceed 30 days if requested by a state or federal agency or a law enforcement agency. So the bank can kind of do it on its own in 10 days, but remember, it's already made a report to the Department of Family Services. It's possibly involved third parties, but if this hold needs to be extended, requires cooperation on the request of someone like a law enforcement agency protecting that person. Page 9, 3510-405, immunity, Madam Chairwoman. This is an employee of a financial institution who provides the notification as listed under the law to a third party or otherwise follows this law, line 15, is immune from civil or criminal liability arising from the notification, report, testimony, or participation in the judicial proceeding. Protects the people that are trying to stop the bad actor. Same goes with line 21. Same provisions apply to the financial institution, Madam Chairwoman. And there's a bill on page 10 about records. Section 2, it's the Department of Family Services is authorized to promulgate rules. Section 3 are the effective dates. Some are effective immediately, and some are effective on July 1st, 2020. That's the bill. Happy to discuss.
Thank you, Senator Case. Questions from the Senate? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and for the very thorough explanation of this bill. I certainly support every effort to protect vulnerable adults from exploitation, but those laws are currently already on the books. Everyone in Wyoming is a mandatory reporter if they suspect abuse of either a child or an adult that might be vulnerable. And so maybe help me walk through why such prescriptive needs are, I mean, as a Republican legislature, I mean, we are mandating that private for-profit banks have certain policies. I mean, I know we do that for guns, but this is a different issue. So, can somebody help me understand why we would get so prescriptive about how these internal operations go when they already have the authority to report suspected criminal activity, which is a confidential report to the Department of Family Services. I'm not aware of any liability that comes from a report like that. And so what really is the need, and how does this really play out, and why does this bill need to be 10 pages?
Further discussion? Senator Case.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you for the excellent question. Madam Chairwoman, I think it comes down to this, provide some guidelines. The whole banking statute is pretty prescriptive. And bankers kind of look for certainty. They're kind of that kind of people, I guess. But I think the key point, anyone can make a confidential report, but that doesn't place a hold on the transaction. That doesn't stop the exploitation. That maybe gets something happening, but then you've got to possibly get a court order. Maybe the money's gone by that time. This kind of empowers the entity making the report. It gives them some protection, and gives them some immunity from civil liability. But the ability to put a hold, that's very prescriptive. I totally get it. You know, we have laws in this country that say if you have money in a bank, you're allowed to get to it. And the bank has to be open on certain days. This bill lets the bank put a hold on it. It's pretty powerful, but it can only do it if they have made a report. And if law enforcement asks, the hold can last longer and immunity comes into play. It also directs banks' employees to do something. So I think that's why it's very prescriptive. I think the good senator, this chairman of the Judiciary Committee, is absolutely right. Any individual can make a report to the DFS, but it doesn't have the protections of freezing the transactions and providing the context that this bill does in a very prescriptive statute, the banking statute.
Thank you, Senator Case. Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just another further follow-up. I mean, isn't it true that the banks already freeze the transactions? And they do that through the user agreements that they have with their banking customers that allows them, if there's suspected fraudulent activity, that transaction can and will be frozen. And so why are they seeking this kind of statutory cover when they're currently and have been doing it for a long time?
Further discussion on the bill? Senator Case.
Well, Madam Chairwoman, I'm not sure I have the 100% answer. So I think we should ask the banks that they're actually providing lunch, so go talk to them. But I think there's definitely a difference in the ease of implementing this way versus going in. I don't know of any banks that have ever, except for something really severe, gone into those depository agreements and relied on those. But we have a banker in the room. I guess we got more than one banker, and I'd be happy to hear from them. I'm not a banker, but I will get better answers for the good chairman.
Thank you, Senator Case. We did hear the 5-letter word. Senator Nethercott. That would be lunch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking of lunch, did you see that the credit unions paid for all of the unpaid school student lunches across our state? What a remarkable thing. Happy lunch.
Let's have President Dockstader.
Thank you. It sounds like there's a lot more going on behind the scenes in this argument than what's being portrayed. Jumping off to lunch, who's offering lunch, that's improper. Folks, this isn't political persuasion, one or the other. To make reference to one party, you can't belong to one party and support this. Folks, this bill was brought because the banks out there are having some trouble, that they want to make sure that some of our seniors out there are better taken care of. And when you need to go into the banking acts and the laws regarding that, you have to have 10-page bills. Folks, there's a whole lot more going on in this opposition than what meets the eye right now. You simply need to stand up and support an effort to protect our senior citizens on this bill. Don't use this bill to portray or to cause other problems. That's not right. This is just simply trying to protect our seniors across the state. Thank you.
Further discussion on the bill? Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Baldwin's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of Senate File 76, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Senate File 76 has passed Committee of the Whole. Majority Floor Leader Driscoll.
Thank you. I'm going to do a privilege, and then we're going to do our lunch announcement. Folks, we got through 4 bills this morning. 4. Looking forward, there's another 20 to add on there, and they got to be out of the House by tomorrow. And I'm not pushing anybody for anything, but if you got bills that are important, you better talk to me, because it's almost a guarantee at this point that we're not getting through the bills. That's just the way it falls, and I'm happy with it. It's not a problem by me, but it might be a problem by some of you that your bills don't make it. So think about that as we do our debate. Let's keep it crisp and concise and to the point. Because tomorrow's budget day again. I doubt we do very many bills on the cow. It's Friday, and I doubt anybody wants to work till 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock on a Friday. So,
Senator, I think I need to be not be sitting here. Maybe we get our nice president up here with the right motion.
No, I request committee of whole stand at ease to the sound of the gavel. That's to you.
Senator, I think we are looking for a beg leave to,
Oh, you are correct. Mr. Chairman, move the committee of the whole, beg leave to rise and sit again. Thank you for the correction.
all the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion's passed.
If we can get 6 bills this afternoon, we don't have much work.
I said this is a trigger.
He sent me a co-sponsor email, and I said, kind of interested to talk about this.
So I was upset that I wasn't a co-sponsor.
So, you know, I care about that too. I experience both sides.
Okay, we have a motion to, Senator Driscoll? Make the motion now, sorry.
President, I move we stand recessed until 2 p.m.
Thank you. Announcements? Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 10, the Healthiest Committee in the Senate, will meet at 8:30 tomorrow morning in Connector Room 6 to hear House Bill 33, Community Health Services, Continued Redesign Efforts.
Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet in Connector W6, and we're going to take up 2 House bills, so there's no urgency there. We'll take up House Bill 21, repealing exemption for one-way pagers, and House Bill 22, engrossed, industrial revenue bonds, pilot payments. Let's, there is a lunch, you can pick up a box lunch. Let's meet at 12:30. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 5, Agriculture, will meet today upon adjournment in Capitol Room W110 and online to consider Senate File 93, legislative voting records, legislative website, Senate File 96, collection of election ballots, prohibition, Senate File 69, property tax limits.
Anyone else? Reminder rules, 12 noon, capital extension W002 for Senate File 70. Anyone else?